Welcome back to our PowerPoint tutorial. In the first part, we covered how to create a blank slideshow, populate it with blank slides, and then introduce visuals to those slides. In the second part, we're going to cover how to introduce transitions to your slideshows, how to get to point A to point B, and then we're going to start introducing our textual content, the content that's written on the slides. First things first, we're going to talk about transitions. Transitions are how you get from one slide to the next and what happens in between. They have quite a few options available to you in the transitions toolbar, but what I recommend is using a simple fade through color or a fade that's smooth. One of these two, because again, your transitions shouldn't be distracting, and if you've got different transitions for every slide, that can get pretty distracting and it's ultimately more work for you. So you can do that individually and waste a lot of time, or you can save time by hitting Command A over here in the slide panel to select every single slide at once. And once you've done that, come over here and click whatever transition that you'd like. In this case, I'm going to stick with Fade Smoothly, and now every single slide should, if I hit play here, fade smoothly from one slide to the next. So this looks like what we want it to. So that part's done. Notice that it didn't take very long to create transitions for these slides right here, because again, you should use one type of transition and just go ahead and select all of them. That way you don't have to worry about it anymore. Also, don't forget to save. Always be sure to save your documents before something unfortunate could happen. Now that we've got our transitions completely covered, we're going to start introducing our textual information. This sort of information is going to come from your research or your outline, and it's going to get the viewer acclimated to how the image relates to what you're trying to say. Okay, so let's go ahead and start introducing our text content. So we have the name of our TED presenter, Brian Cox, and we have some information about him below it that we're going to include as well. So, for our first slide, we have established how we want to present our information to our audience, and we should remain consistent with how we do this so that the information is easily understood and easily interpreted from slide to slide. So we have our title information, our TED presenter's name, in this case, Brian Cox, in all caps, and it's very, very large, so you're going to look there first. And then we have secondary information that relates back to our primary information, or our title, so that these two things work together, and then they both reinforce the image, which is a picture of our TED presenter. For the next slide, we're going to introduce the main subject of this TED presenter's talk. So let's go ahead and copy and paste those. So we're going to take the title, paste it in, subtitle, the actual topic of his talk, and then the information that's in the main body of the slide. Now, you'll notice that there's a bit extra here. It's kind of hard to read in this particular slide. And the reason it's that way is because I've animated this text information to appear and disappear over the course of the slide so that this information doesn't interfere with each other. And we're going to get to that in the next tutorial. But for now, don't worry too much about that. So we're just going to copy it verbatim to make sure that it looks exactly the same. And then we're going to go back and add our animations to this so that it's going to be easily interpreted by our audience. So let's move on to the next slide and grab the information from there. I'm going to do something to save a little bit of time and delete the background, and then grab all of my text, copy it, and then paste it. So if you ever want to play around in PowerPoint and get an interesting presentation for your text, open a blank slide, play around with your text, highlight it all, and then paste it into your images. That way you don't have to fight with it too much. You can just produce something on the fly and it looks really nice for you. Same for this one. Since it's really hard to grab all of that text, I'm going to delete my background, grab all of my text information, go to my slide, and then paste it. So notice that everything looks the same. Also keep in mind, even though the text does change format and location from slide to slide, the title and sub-information always remains the same. The way the information is presented is always the same. That's very key. slide, for example, if you didn't want to do anything fancy with overlapping text, this is the ideal that you should go for. Notice that our title is very, very strong. It's all caps, of course, and it's larger than our subtext. Our rating is the largest here because we want to focus on that. That's the primary reason for this slide. And then we have our secondary information that, again, is smaller. But notice it's not overlapping with any other text, so you don't have to worry about animating anything if that's not something that you want to do. So this is an ideal slide if you don't want to have overlapping text, or you don't want to worry too much about animating anything too heavily. And let's go ahead and paste that in. And again, these slides look identical because we've already done our work. What I recommend doing, and what I do, is I make a blank slide, then I figure out how I want to present my information, and then copy and paste that so I don't have to fight it too much on the slide itself. It just falls right into place. Okay, with that slide completed, we're about halfway through. Let's go ahead and get the rest of this information pasted in here. Including your text should be the easiest part of your slideshow. You shouldn't have to worry too much about composing your information within your slideshow, because you should have done that with your research and beforehand. If you're coming in here and starting to write your information down and how you want to present that, it may not work out for you. You might end up fighting what kind of content you want to include rather than how you want to include that content. So it's best to err on the safe side and go ahead and write everything before you even get started with the slideshow, so you can just go ahead and start bringing that information in and then figuring out how to best present it, because that's what you want to really focus on. Almost done here with including our information. Notice that every single slide there's a small difference in where the information is included. I usually try to include it in places where it's easy to read, but also doesn't interfere with the image that I'm trying to show the audience. So sometimes it is a bit of a battle to get your information in there while preserving the integrity of the image. Like, for example, we're kind of cutting off Mr. Robinson's face here, but it's not too bad. Maybe we can kind of adjust this a little bit. So this is a great example of sometimes your information not playing too nicely with your images, and this is where you're going to have to make a few adjustments. If we were to do so here, I would probably bring the text elements down a bit. But you're also running into the problem of where rehearse is becoming invisible because of this text. So you may have to scrunch it over and bring it down. And now, in this case, the text is much more legible. So even with our previous slideshow, we can have some improvements to make it easier to read. The difference between these two slides is slight, but it's big enough to make a difference to how your information is read and portrayed. In this slide, it's a little bit difficult to read because it does interfere with the speaker's face. In this slide, and our new slide, this information is moved away and reformatted to be in an area that's less obscured by the picture that it is trying to describe. So let's go ahead and save our document. And now we have a complete slideshow, and in the next tutorial, we're going to cover animations and then any touch-ups that your slideshow might require, and then what the final slideshow should look like.